Speaking about products, wonderful products, joining us now is Dr. Paul Cooley. He is the man behind what we first heard of him when he introduced a product called Angler's Leaderboard, which we have been using, ALB, baby.
ALB.
And now is here to talk to us about the latest product out on the market. He is the founder and president of NextGen, Environmental Research, Inc., fishery science living on Lake Winnipeg. That's where I'd like to be right now. January in Lake Winnipeg. I'm in.
You'd be cool up there, but she's chilly already there. Isn't it?
And avid angler. And good day. How are you, Paul?
Hey, doing great, guys. Glad to be back. Glad to be back on the show, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about ice time today.
Oh my God.
We're excited to hear about this.
Ice time, sure. You know, the minute that we saw it, we got together in the boardroom and we said, wait a minute. Are we reading this right? Is this true? Because, and you can correct me on this, it's the only one of its kind. And it answers an age-old problem that fishermen have had during the ice season, and that is how thick is the ice? And is it safe to walk on? And this could be the breakthrough for that. Tell folks a little bit about it.
Yeah, thanks. We started working actually on the Ice Time project back in 2017. Put in a proposal to the Canadian Space Agency, an unsolicited proposal, and they really liked it. Fast forward a number of years, there's a lot of technology involved in doing this. And so we've gone through 4 projects with them. We're the first company in the world to develop this satellite technology. So we use satellites to image the ice, and they're kind of special satellites. Most people don't know about them because they're called satellite radar. So they're, instead of using light to form an image, these satellites are kind of more like a sonar. So anglers will think like sonar pretty easily. So it has its own energy source, like a sonar does, and it pings like a sonar does. So it can ping at night. It can ping through clouds. It doesn't need daylight. So it's basically weather independent. And the challenge with most satellites, of course, is that you have cloud cover 4 days out of 5. And so when you're trying to get information, especially at those challenging times of year when ice is starting to form and everybody's wondering, you know, when can we get on the ice? It's a tumultuous time of year for weather, and the weather's always poor. And because it's blistery outside. And so with these satellites, you get information whenever the satellite goes over. And the cool thing about radar satellites is in the cold of winter, not only can you see it at night and through clouds, but you actually see through the snow to the ice. And that's a pretty remarkable characteristic. And it works great for the lake ice use case, because now we have something that will give us a bird's eye view on things that you can't see from the shoreline. So, you know, people have been challenged by this for so long because you're forced to make decisions without any credible information. And so what do people do? They perhaps invest an hour of their time or more, and they drive and they get to the lake shore. And like in the new ice period, you know, you look out on the ice and there isn't a track to be had. And so you're looking at your friends, or maybe your wife, and say, "Well, you go first. I'll walk out and
Honey,
have a look.
I love you."
Yeah, you know, and it's millions of people in North America each year are faced with this challenge, and so now what we have is from home. We publish these images on the IceTime application, which you put on any PC or desktop or mobile device, and you now have credible information at home. So even before you drive, you might look at the IceTime map and say, oh, okay, last week I saw this place was open water. I'd really like to go fishing tomorrow. It's Saturday. So instead of going where I was hoping to go, maybe let's go to that other lake that's had ice for 2 weeks. And then, you know, you're making educated decisions before you even leave home. And that's really what we're trying to do is, you know, give people information that saves lives, essentially. So the Canadian Red Cross did a study over 10 years and in Canada only, and it's tougher even south of the border in some places. There's almost 500 deaths every 10 years due to cold water immersion, and the vast majority of these fatalities are people just like us. They're recreational people. They're snowmobilers. They're anglers, and really, what my hope for ice time in the long term is that we take that number and cut it down by half. And all we want to do is put credible information in front of people and hope that they adopt the tool and use it.
Wow. It's a great goal, I guess you'd call it, right? Because it is scary how many people actually die from this stuff, or are you close to death?
I thought it would be more. I thought that number would be higher, because when I remember doing the radio show for all those years on Saturday mornings, it was always from about January till March. It was always doom and gloom first thing in the show, because that's when we'd have to announce the fatalities.
Yeah, Slorfy was talking about that, right?
The fatalities that weekend of ice fishing.
And of course, these are just Canadian stats. I have a harder time in the U.S. because everything's divided by state. But I'm sure the numbers are probably triple that in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
I have a question for you, because we're dealing with mortality and human life and all that stuff. So is this thing foolproof? In other words, can somebody take your app and look at a lake that's 120 miles away from him, from where he is right now, and determine that the ice is safe and drive out there and go on that ice? Like, is it fail-proof?
Well, what I would say is this: we can provide information that would suggest that, but ice travel risk is a personal thing, and my risk tolerance is maybe way different than Pete's, and I never want to see ice from the bottom side, if you know what I mean. So I am not. I'm risk averse, whereas other people may not be. So what really ice time is it's another tool in your toolkit.
Perfect.
Right.
And it doesn't take away the need to do your own due diligence. Don't get rid of your spud bar. You still have to do the things that are important to make your travel less risky and more safer. But it's not something that, you don't take your brain off with your hat and pick up this app. You still have to. Right. What you're doing is it's giving you the opportunity to review information that allows you to make decisions.
Perfect.
And in other words, it contributes to them, but it doesn't make them for you.
It'll save you that travel time, knowing well ahead that lake 120 miles away is not frozen.
Exactly. It's the same thing as using the Windy app for huge winds. You're going to Lake Ontario or Bay of Quinte. Well, there's a safety. I mean, not just a matter of I can't fish and that, but we start going out in 3 and 4 footers in a 12-foot tinner. What? You should use your head. So you're going to use that as a tool. Yeah. Paul, you were saying that it's working on satellite radar versus satellite. Google Maps is satellite imagery, I'm assuming, right? It's just a picture. Is that what that is with Google Maps?
So that's called an optical image. So that's not really much different than what you're doing with your RGB camera in your phone. Okay, so what is your visible data that we can see? Right. So is your image the same idea as that, but it's going through this sonar system or whatever? Like, how does it come out? Is it a picture, or is it a kind of a graphic? Or what does it look like? It's an image. And so what we do is raw radar data are very difficult to interpret. So what we've done in our projects with the Canadian Space Agency over the last few years is teach a machine learning program the different types of ice. So we literally take maps and we map it out and say, this is new ice, this is black ice, this is white ice, this is rubble ice, this is a pressure ridge. These are the things that you see of the different ice types. This is open water. And we just give it thousands and thousands and thousands of examples of that. So then when you have a new radar image that comes in, it classifies it for us. So it's largely automated. And so it ends up looking just like a normal map. You'll see water in blue, and black ice is a dark color, and so they're very easy to interpret in the application. And so put up some shots on screen and just give you a couple examples of that. But they're simple to interpret, and it really has been a long journey of realizing how complex ice is and how dynamic it actually is. Even when you're on the lake, I live on Lake Winnipeg, just over here. And when we're doing the research out on the ice, we've got satellites going overhead and we're flying drones. And there's things that we're discovering, that things are changing even when you don't know that they are. I've had, during my studies, I was revisiting a site on snowmobile and following my track from the week previous. And this is on Lake Winnipeg, so it's a big lake. And all of a sudden I lost my trail. And there had been no snow in the previous week, so it was easy to follow. But it was before sunrise, and it was dark. And so the location I was seeking was, there was a big slab of blue ice that came out of the lake. It was about 4 or 5 feet tall. So I knew what I was looking for, and eventually I found it. And, I set up my shelter and fished for a little while. And then when the sun came up, I unzipped the door, and the island I was supposed to be in front of wasn't there. Wow. So what had happened was the offshore ice sheet in the lake, and this is in mid-December, when this happened, that ice sheet moved 1.2 kilometers to the south. Oh, so the reason I lost my trail was it continued more than a kilometer south of where I was.
Wow.
And these things are occurring. And you know what? When you're just looking at snow, you're not seeing, if you're not seeing these things in real time,
exactly,
they're very difficult to appreciate that they're actually happening. So there's a lot going on, especially with moderate and larger size lakes, that people, if they knew, they probably would take more caution than they do, because the lakes are very active, and it lasts for 4 to 6 weeks after you start forming ice.
Paul, will this thing give us the actual thickness of the ice? Can we determine whether ice is thick enough, say, to drive a vehicle on?
For most lakes in Canada, most of the time, the answer is yes. So what we've done is, how we do it is, we are very good at imaging early ice. So we're distinguishing between open water and new black ice, which is typically very smooth, very thin, typically forms at night under low wind or no wind. And so once we have that date, we connect to temperature data and we start to grow that ice using an equation. And so even though the imagery on average is about weekly, each day we go back through an automated program and grow the ice using that equation based on the hourly temperatures. And so you do have information on this, and it's important to, again, nothing beats boots on the ground. This is a powerful tool, but you need to go out there and use your spud bar, cut a hole with your auger. And one of the things that, we can now do is show people that the ice forms in stages. So on a moderately large lake, you might freeze ice first in a bay, let's say where the boat launch is. But the offshore zone of the lake is still wide open. And then you'll start to freeze in stages. And then ultimately, in the end, you've got open water in the middle of the lake that can't be seen from shore. Right. Now, with Ice Time, you have a tool, you can actually see these stages unfold. And when you know where the boundary is between the older ice, which of course is thicker, and the boundary to the younger ice found further offshore, you can anticipate where that ice thickness is now going to change. Right. And that's a huge amount. That's a huge amount of information. And there's some places, like I know on Simcoe, there's a bunch of lakes like this. People, they really want to get out there and they want to get farther away from shore than most people are willing to walk. So they want to mechanize really quickly. And there's times where, like, as we were building this, I'm imaging these lakes and following social media sites and seeing people with vehicles, including trucks, while there's still open water in the offshore. Yeah. And one of the things that you're going to learn by using the imagery in ice time, and after a few years, and you become a lot better at understanding ice and the dynamics that it has, you'll realize, gosh, the ice is still moving around, or there's open water in the offshore. It's just simply not time to use a vehicle yet.
Right.
What that does is it expedites your ability to travel, and it increases your risk because now you're more likely to travel farther onto thinner ice. And, one of the things that happens to people, this happens on Rainy Lake most years. The offshore zone won't freeze for a long time because the volume of that basin is it holds its heat for a long time. And people will be able to drive for 15 kilometers, say, from shore, and drive around. And then suddenly the truck goes in, because what happened will be that, say, 3 or 4 days ago, that offshore basin that was open, it just froze over and it got a coat of snow. And you can't see that. Mm-hmm. But you can see that new thin ice is different. Under the snow, because you're seeing through the snow, is different and thinner than what you're seeing everywhere else on the lake. So just by having this stuff around, it just helps your planning your day, and then you still do your due diligence on the ice as you would today, but it's going to change the mindset that you've got about where you think it's reasonable to go.
So, Paul, from what I understand, then this is much like the maps that are available to folks on their fish finders and their GPS units. If it's not charted by a mapping company, it's not available on the sonar. Is this the same thing?
Well, how it works? That's a great question. Yeah. How it works? What we've started this year is when you first go into the application, one of the first things that we want you to do is select your satellite footprint area of interest. And what that allows you to do is say, okay, I'm interested in Simcoe Couchiching. And you'll go onto, we'll have a map there with just a bunch of squares on it, which are basically the footprints of the satellite data. And you select that and it gets highlighted. And that's essentially you telling us, this is where I'm interested in data. So we have people from all over the place that are signing up, and we've got users in Maine, and they're not anglers, they're skaters. They want to get on early ice before the snow comes. So ice time really helps them say, okay, even though half the big lakes are still open water, these are the small lakes that have frozen over, say a week or so ago. And now it's reasonable to approach those before their snowfall starts to occur. We have another guy, he signed up just last week from the Sierra Nevada, of all places. And he's not using it to go ice fishing or snowmobiling either. But what they want down there is when they're climbing trails up into the eastern slopes of the Sierras, they don't want to find ice when they get up there. So they want ice time to tell them when their open water season's over, because the ice is never dependable enough, but it stops them from fishing when they get up there. So we're finding all different kinds of people are using this for different reasons. And it's super cool to see because we're all involved in ice in some way.
So you don't have to be out there mapping every lake. This is happening live, basically, right? Unlike mapping companies.
Yes, this is near real time.
It doesn't matter where it is, when it is, it's just happening.
Yeah. So if you signed up for the Simcoe Couchiching area, you select your footprint. The imagery is about weekly. And then when the satellite comes over in that area, I think it's around supper time, we'll have that map online for you, possibly within 12 hours, but for sure within a day.
So it's not instant. It's not. This is not something that people can just travel with to unknown areas and expect to get there and open their app up and it says, "Yeah, don't step on that ice. It's not thick enough."
Well, weekly is about as much as I think people can consume. Right. Okay. Otherwise, it becomes a job. You're having to check. So you're having imagery that's less than a week old, but as soon as the imagery comes out, that's really when people are consuming it. And then once they've made their decisions about where they go, they can revisit those places. And then the next week, when the imagery comes through, maybe they can think about, okay, now we can go on the larger lakes because now we can see The ice has formed across the whole lake, and it's now safe to go. It's reasonable to travel on the larger lakes that stay open longer.
Yeah, once again, with the word of caution, people still have to be, use their heads.
Yeah, of course.
Especially,
sure.
And I'm sure you mentioned this on the app when they get into it, especially the fact that this is not, current up to the minute data, right? They have to be aware of the fact that this could be up to a week old. So please, if you're watching this and rushing out, which I'm sure you will, because this is an incredible product, rushing out to get this app, keep in mind that it's just, as Paul said at the top of the show, it's just another tool in your toolbox.
Yeah, it'll just help you make smarter decisions. You can just be smarter on the ice and reduce risk by planning based on some information. And there's things that I use it for, like on Lake Winnipeg. Not all lakes have rough ice, which we call rubble ice, but Lake Winnipeg has a lot of it because the ice is moving around in early winter a lot. So it's always breaking up and being pushed by the wind and piling up. And a lot of times that's a barrier to travel. Right. And so you can see the rough ice on ice time so well that I can pick the path that I might have a kilometer of rough ice I want to go through. And you can see it clear as day in ice time where the smooth ice is versus the rough ice. I had a guide actually on Lake Winnipeg approach me not too long ago and said, just by being able to see where the smooth ice is, I can avoid the rough ice. But he says, not only does that mean I'm not beating up my gear in the sleigh behind my snowmobile, but I'm not beating up my clients.
Yeah. It's true.
So,
It's true.
He said, I'd rather drive 3 times farther to avoid the rough ice to get to where I want to go than try to navigate through rough ice. Because oftentimes it's more than a meter high and you can't see over it.
Wow. Well, it's just, that goes the same with just snowmobilers without ice fishing or anything like that. People love snowmobiling all the time on lakes, right? And it's such a smooth, especially if you're on a luxury machine, you don't want to go over anything rough. You just want to take a nice cruise, but it's sending you a new path. It's perfect for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Paul, you must have discovered some interesting things, or maybe as a scientist, nothing really surprises you, but you must have discovered in your years working on this app that not all water is the same, and some bodies of water require different temperatures and conditions to freeze than other bodies of water. And it's not just the temperature itself. Have you come across a lot of that? Or is Lake Winnipeg the same as Lake Simcoe or in Lake Ontario? In other words, once they hit a temperature, it doesn't matter, they're all going to freeze up. Because from what I understand of water density, for example, and water makeup, they're all different.
So most lakes, small lakes are relatively predictable. They kind of freeze over at the same time. They're small, so they're not getting a lot of wave action when it's starting to cool off. Mm-hmm. And so small lakes are a little more predictable, and they tend not to have rough ice. But once you get out of the class of the smallest lakes, you'll just see a diversity of things. Not all lakes have pressure ridges, but we can map pressure ridges from space. Yeah, wow. And pressure ridges, I have a friend on Lake of the Woods who has a friend in turn that was flying around an island in the middle of winter as he had the week previous, and came around the corner and a pressure ridge had uplifted in the meantime. And he's, he hit the pressure ridge at high speed, and unfortunately he's paralyzed. So it's very tough, challenging things happen on ice, and the pressure ridges are always uplifting, getting larger and getting longer throughout the course of the winter. We did our validation, or our ground truth studies, as some people call it, on Lake Winnipeg. And after following pressure ridges on Lake Winnipeg for 4 or 5 years, the south basin of the lake alone has more than 500 kilometers of pressure ridges on average. And so those stop you from getting where you're wanting to go, or for those that are for those that will drive their trucks over them when they're sufficiently small, the real risk is not getting across the ridge. It's
getting back.
It's a little bit, well, for sure, later in the day, especially in the spring, the conditions are worse in the afternoon. But what happens is people, they want to speed up to go over the ridge. And what that does is all that momentum is carried for when you're coming down on the far side of the ridge.
Right.
Well, the actual odds of going down in the ridge axis itself, like where the ice is cracked open and is lifting up, people tend not to get stuck or go in there. It's all the momentum that they gain to go across the ridge. And because the ridge also has troughs on both sides, so the ice buckles because it expands and it's pointing up, but there's also about 5 times the height of the ridge. There's a trough on both sides where it's buckled too. And so you come down on the far side of the ridge and you're still in the trough, which is deformed ice. And that's where people get into trouble. And so what you can do with ice time, for example, is when people find a spot that is traversable, now what you can do is, just as an angler yourself, you can just drag a ridge crossing symbol onto your map to show yourself and your friends where people are crossing the ridge safely.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And there's all kinds of things like that the user community can do to map hazards or things that they observe that might be today. If the imagery is 2 or 3 days old, there's going to be things that the mapping, the angling or snowmobile community can put on there that's only an hour old, or everybody sees it in real time as soon as it's published.
And that'll come up on anybody that has the app. Like if you're on that lake, it's going to immediately show this is an access point. You can go across that. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Imagine the folks that do ice roads. How much of a tool how important a tool like this can be to them.
We've actually worked with First Nations in northern Manitoba on Island Lake. It's a big lake, and they have a 5-lane wide ice road between communities. And so they are interested in ice time because as they're setting up the road, they appreciate that the lake grows ice in stages because it's a big lake, and the offshore zone will freeze last. And now they realize, like in the past, they'd kind of have to go, well, we're not sure, but maybe we'll cut holes and see how thick the ice is for the first kilometer. Yeah. And they'd say, okay, now we probably should stop, even though they can see ice out there farther. Now they can actually track the stages and know the age of the ice and get the ice thickness from the tool, which of course is an estimate based on temperature. But it gives you a lot more than what you'd have otherwise. And so now they can look at this and say, oh, the ice in the bay has only been around for a week. We're not even going to think about it.
Yeah.
So
I can see this opening up so much more water for people during the ice period, especially for anglers.
Yeah.
Places where, you probably wouldn't even dreamed of venturing out to. Now you at least have the confidence to know that there is data here that would indicate I can take the chance of slowly making my way out to that far, side of the lake that I've never been able to reach before. So wonderful. We've talked about all the niceties and all the good things and how wonderful it is. Let's get down to the facts here. First of all, when is it available, if it is not already available? And what's the cost of something like this?
Yeah, so it's available now. We're live. People are subscribing. And this is really the first year that we've done limited releases before while we were developing the tool to get feedback from the user community. But we're live right now. It's icetime.app on the web. You can sign up there, and it's $49 a year for IceTime Pro, which gives you access to the satellite radar imagery. And there's also a version, IceTime Lite. And what we do with that is with IceTime Pro, you're focused on the ice conditions itself. But of course, most people, like me, are traveling to get to your destination. So we actually have, for most of North America, a road conditions map that's real time. And so when you're thinking, let's say you're driving from Toronto and you're going to Simcoe, what are the roads like? Or you're fishing on Simcoe and and this happened to me last year, and that a storm is coming, because the forecasters are usually very good at predicting storms. And when they arrive, the fishing was really good. And I said, you know what? It's not supposed to arrive until lunch. So I'm going to go out tomorrow and I'm going to fish at least a chunk of the morning and have a good time. And as it turns out, I'm looking at the storm approaching in ice time, and it was approaching slower than predicted. So I got almost a full day on the ice. And when it was starting to come, I knew it would take me about 45 minutes to get back to where I live, which was most of a snowmobile ride. And so I saw it approaching, and by the time I got home, it started to snow, and it was just another case in point where if you're dialed into what's happening in real time, especially with the weather, or what the conditions are going to be like when you're driving home, you can make a better decision. Oh, you know what? It's probably a good time we leave the ice now.
And
awesome.
And that's real time?
It's real time. Yep.
Wow.
So you're using satellite radar for looking at the precipitation amounts and the type of precipitation. So it'll say, millimeters of snow, and you'll see the storms like a Colorado low. You'll see them coming. And in that case, I was on the ice, and it helped me stay there as long as I possibly could.
You pushed it.
Having a great time.
And think about that. Forget the ice period. That tool would be valuable to an angler even in the open water period, right?
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
I use it. And actually, I hadn't really thought of this in that way. If the users want us to keep it open in the summer for that purpose, we would certainly do that for them.
Well, you can get real time.
We turn it off when the spring and open water's here. But
right.
If users want us to keep it on, just let us know, and we'll do it for you.
I'll give you an example where we could have used that. So I don't remember the name of the lake, but it was the worst looking storm coming at us that we've ever been out in. Do you remember that? We shot that sky was just little back lake, and we outran it.
Oh, I know. That was up
Missinabie.
Up in that area, that little lake we went to, yeah.
So had we had that app, we could have been confident in getting that, an extra hour or two, because the spot was great, remember? But we got pushed off at the winds. But with your app, it would allow us to look at that storm in real time and see that, in fact, it was starting to move slightly to the east of us.
Yeah.
Right? We thought it was coming directly at us. We would see it moving. I think you need to make that a big part of this app, because that's probably as valuable to some folks as the ice conditions in the winter.
We talk about it less, probably just because we spent years on the ice side of this.
Right. Exactly.
But there's been times where, I have got off the ice or got off the water because the storm is approaching, and storm passed us by, and it just went to the west or to the east. And as it turns out, we probably could have stayed in some cases. So
I think that
it helps you get to the lake and from the lake. And while you're on the ice, it gives you information that will reduce risk and help you make smarter decisions about how you're traveling on, for sure.
Yeah.
$50 a year.
Yep.
Another thing I'm thinking, guys, Angelo, you'll appreciate this, and Dean, is especially in southern Ontario, that moves, we're talking about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours north of us. So we're going them towards the Halliburtons and all that stuff. Spring-fed brook trout lakes. You know what I mean? In those iffy, mild weathers, well, the spring-fed lakes are even different than any other lake around there, right? So This would be a great tool for seeing if these springs have actually froze over, if you've got safe ice to go do your brook trout fishing and all that stuff too, right? Because those lakes like that, they stay open when the lake next door is totally froze over.
That's what I was saying to Paul earlier, that not all lakes and water is equal, right?
So there's all different elements.
Got to have... So just so I can get my head around this, Paul. So in Pete's case, he wants to go to this little obscure little lake way in the outback, tiny little speck of water. All he has to do is tell you that that's what his intention is a week before he plans on going, and you will have the ice information for him at that point?
Yes. So
it doesn't matter where it is. Doesn't matter where it is.
Well, the challenge here is, we can't map of all of Canada for one guy. So it's a big country. So what we've tried to do is say, each satellite footprint is like 200 kilometers by 300 kilometers. They're big areas. Yeah. And for this winter, to make sure that you're getting the core area that you're interested in, your area of interest, you specify that for that winter. But you also see, of course, all the other images from all the other users. So chances are where you're going, somebody else, if it's off the beaten path and it's not where you've specified your footprint for that winter, chances are somebody else has requested that area and you'll have access to it. Otherwise, the challenge for us is we can't map all of Canada reasonably.
Right.
And so we kind of have to say, okay, where's your main area of interest? And, if other users say, I would love to have this footprint over here and that footprint over there and that footprint over there, because I travel, or these are the places that I often go, we could certainly work that out. Like right now, we just have it set up for the $49.99 that you have one footprint related to that. But if you wanted more, we could easily accommodate that. We want people to be safe. So if you have a need for more data than that, there would be a small charge on top of that probably. So we haven't crossed that bridge yet. But if you want more areas of interest, that's something that we can easily do.
Wow, it's fascinating product for sure.
Is there ever a chance that the ice time will be in real time-ish? Let's say daily instead of weekly. Is there ever that possibility?
In principle, it would be, but honestly, right now, the volume of data that we push through, like these images, each satellite image is like 5 gigabytes. And so we resolve that down to something very relatively tiny that gets onto your mobile device.
Right.
So it's very light and thrifty, but the huge amount of data that we would process, the bottleneck ultimately would be how much data can we push in 24 hours. So right. I don't think it would be daily. As more of these satellites are going up, and constellations of them, so it's not just one satellite that's orbiting the Earth. They'll have constellations of 2 or 3 or 4 satellites, so that the amount of repeat passes increases the more satellites you have in low Earth orbit. So, when it comes to it, I would say, I don't think I would want anything more than 3 days. And we're around 5 or 6 right now, depending on where you are. And that's still a lot of information for people to digest. But every third day, that's probably a realistic goal. But we need more satellites in orbit to do that.
Right. Gotcha.
I think the other thing too that is worth mentioning at this point is that early in the ice up season is less apt to be 100% accurate than later in the season. And what I mean by that is, and let's take Lake Simcoe as a classic example. So what happens in November, December, ice-wise on Simcoe is kind of unpredictable. If you're looking at information that was from last week, it probably would not be a real good indication of what's happening today. However, when you get into January and February, I don't think it really matters whether that data is from last week, last month, or 2 days ago. It's going to be fairly accurate. The movement is not that great out into the season as it is at the beginning of the season, right? I'm assuming that. Yeah,
the conditions are more dynamic early in the season. In the case of Simcoe, we've mapped open water leads in the month of March that an open water lead is just a really wide crack in the ice where open water is exposed. And it's called a lead because it's sufficiently large that if you wanted to navigate a boat in there, you could. Not that people would, but just showing you the size of what actually happens. And Simcoe is one of those places. In the month of March, you'll have a big blow go through, and that ice will open up 1 kilometer, and it seems to tear usually down the west shore and then loops across north of Cooks Bay. and towards back towards Georgina Island. But so you do get big changes in the winter too. But for most people, like when you're out with your truck and you're driving, you want to know where the ice is, or where the rough ice is, the rubble, and you want to know where the ridges are. So if you can actually get to your destination, and those are features that don't really change much. And here's something that not a lot of people appreciate. When you have a map of pressure ridges on your lake, of course, that's going to help you for your travel during the winter, especially at night or in poor weather, so that you're not, it doesn't become a site of a collision. But it's also where you get your first open water in the spring. So, what goes up must come down. And in the spring, the axis of the ridge that's above the ice heats up faster than the horizontal does. Right. And so those ridges collapse. And in the width of the ridge, you have open water with ridge sail chunks floating around in it. And so what happens is those melt first, and you'll still have people traveling all over the lake in trucks and quads and snowmobiles when this is happening. And what'll happen is those sails will melt away, the chunks will melt away, but you're probably getting positive temperatures during the daytime and freezing temperatures at night. So the axis of the ridge will actually freeze over. You get a dusting of snow. You can't tell that there was a ridge there anymore. Right. And so that's when people drive in to ridge axes. Yeah, and that's in the spring. There's a Facebook Live clip from Lake Winnipeg about some folks that were driving across the South Basin up near Hecla Island. And I'm watching this, and I can see, because I'm trained in this, I can see there's a ridge collapse out the passenger window of the truck when they're filming. And sure enough, about 2 minutes later, their truck went down into it because they drove into a ridge axis and they weren't able to recognize it. So even if you've got a map from February about where the ridges are, that's going to be very helpful in the spring when the ridges are collapsed and you're still getting freezing conditions and snow covers still hiding things from you. So
this episode is brought to you by Anglers Leaderboard and its Spot Mapper feature. Spot Mapper connects your catch data to your spots, allowing you to view your catch history. With Spot Mapper, your locations stay completely private. Only you can access them, so your favorite spots stay your secret. Learn more at anglersleaderboard.com. Has this taught you things about pressure ridges? For example, are they consistent in location year in and year out? Or do they actually move? Do they shift from year in to year out? You know what I mean? Because the story that we know that I've heard all my life is that these cracks are due to the ice shifting and like you said, two pieces of ice basically are pushing up against each other. And I was always led to believe that it's not consistent. In other words, it'll be here this year, but it could be way over there next year. Have you discovered that?
It's a good question. And, after having worked on this since 2017, looking at lakes all across Canada, including the one I live on, Lake Winnipeg, as soon as you think you have it figured out, the lake will do something else.
So it does move.
So during our studies with the Canadian Space Agency, when we were proving that the radar information worked on lake ice, my study area was literally 300 meters from where I am right now. And many years, there tends to be a ridge that goes past this point. And it would have been really convenient if the ridge had a form there that year, but it didn't. So I had to drive 15 kilometers to get pressure ridge samples. But so as soon as you think you've got it handled, but there are patterns that tend to be true, but I'd say one chance in four, you're gonna get what you got last year, this year, the same. So it tends to be quite variable.
But even more reason why an app like this would be handy, even for the hardcore ice fisherman who's been, fishing that lake all his life, and he knows that by mid-January there's going to be, some kind of disturbance up ahead called a crack or a ridge. is not necessarily going to be there in the same place each year. So this app will give them the confidence in knowing that, oh, wow, look at that. That's actually moved. It's a mile away from where it was last year, or 2 kilometers away from where it was last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as we keep imaging during the winter, these ridges are increasing in number and they're increasing in length. So they're growing, they're literally getting taller and they're getting longer. And so what this does to people is if you've got your favorite access point because you're familiar with it, or it's the path of least resistance for you to get onto the ice, and a ridge goes right across that,
you're done.
You would know this from home before you even travel there. And you say, well, maybe we should go in on the west side because there's no ridges there yet this year. And it helps you make decisions about, or if you still want to fish that area, you put your snowmobile in the back of the truck and you do a different mode of transport that'll take you across the ridge more easily.
It's a fascinating product, a fascinating subject. We could talk about it all day, but I'm sure people have got their own questions that they like to ask you. Can they reach out somewhere and just ask before they make the purchase? How does that work?
Absolutely. So the website is icetime.app. And if you want to email us, it's support@nextgenenvironment.ca. So NEXT, Gen Environment, and be happy to address your questions. And, one of the things that we know that with the new technology, people are a little wary about it. So what we've done for this year is we've got a 14-day free trial. So you can just boot it up. You can look at imagery from Simcoe. You could look at Lake Winnipeg. You could look at lakes in North and South Dakota or in Maine, for example, and see what different lakes are looking like at different times of the year, and really get a good feel for what you can anticipate once your trial period is over and your subscription begins.
Cool.
Sounds fantastic, Paul. You hit another one out of the park as usual.
For sure, for sure. I love this.
This one is, not that the others aren't. This one is very exciting, and I think it has tremendous legs for non-ice periods as well. I think you need to keep that in mind and make it available for the full 12 months.
Pocket. I appreciate that, Angelo.
Sure. Thank you, my friend, and we will talk to you very soon. Keep up the good work.
All right, boys.
See you, buddy.
Wow.
That's very cool.
He just keeps on coming up with this stuff.
I know. That's what scientists do. They're just evolving all the time.
If you haven't already done so, look it up. The other one is Angler Leaderboard, or ALB. Now it's being commonly referred to, where you can go out with your buddies on a body of water, and everybody fishes in different areas and whatnot, and you just take pictures of your catch on this board. It automatically does all the calculations for you and stores that data, and then at the end of the day, you guys can share your...
That's right. We've actually helped them on that app too, so they've taken some of our ideas, and so very cool. Lots of fun.
Great people to work with. Now it's called Ice Time. The new one is Ice Time. Look them up. I'll tell you what, they're going to get my $50.
It's a good one.
Even if you don't, I love the opportunity to be able to see real-time weather activity, like now.
You know where I'm going to use it the most, and it's going to be a very limited timing. Unless I wish it was a daily update, but I'm going to be opposite of all the ice anglers. This year was a classic example. When I got to that lake a couple of weeks ago, I told you all the fish were under the ice.
Yeah.
Well, now I know if that lake is iced over, I ain't going. So it's going to save me $100, $150 in gas just to get there by paying the $50.
We mentioned that earlier on.
Yeah, then the other end of that is Zone 20. That Zone 20 open early bass season. I will know which bays open up the first more than anything else. And then once everything else opens up where I can get my boat into, I know that's the warmest water. That's the first bay that's going to open up.
I thought you were going to tell me Bay of Quinte would be a place for this.
Zone 20. That's
right.
that is.
Bay of Quinte.
That's what I was thinking.
This is made for Bay of Quinte.
Yeah. So
both early and late in the season.
Ice fishing alone too, because it's one of the worst ice lakes in the world. You know what I mean, for dangerous ice. So it'd be perfect for that.
Oh, it's fantastic. Out of the park. Look it up. It's called Ice Time app, and it will if you're into ice fishing or spending time. it's not an ice fishing app, right? It's winter. Let's call it a winter app, if you will, because if you're into snowmobiling, backpacking, snowshoeing, hiking, whatever you do in the winter, cross-country skiing,
on the lake,
this tool is going to be invaluable to you in the months ahead. That are it.